Have you ever said something in the heat of the moment and wished you could take it back? Maybe it was a harsh word, a sudden outburst, or a quiet withdrawal that left more damage than you intended. You didn't mean to react that way, it just happened. Like your body moved before your mind had time to catch up. We've all been there. Life presses a button, and before we know it, we're flinching, defending, lashing out. But what if that moment, the one right before the reaction, held more power than we think? What if your real strength doesn't lie in what you do next, but in how long you're willing to wait before doing anything at all? The Stoics believed that power isn't found in controlling everything around you. It's found in mastering what happens inside you, in the breath you take before you speak, in the choice to pause, observe, and then respond, not with emotion, but with intention. This video is about that moment, that tiny space where your freedom lives. So, if you've ever felt like your emotions were leading you instead of you leading them, stay with me. You might find that the most powerful thing you can do is nothing, at least not right away. 1. Response over reaction. Have you ever felt your body move before your mind could catch up? A sharp text, a dismissive glance, a sudden change of plans, and suddenly your chest tightens, your voice sharpens, your breath shortens. You didn't choose the reaction. It chose you. And in that moment it feels powerful, like you're reclaiming your dignity, asserting your worth. But later, when the heat fades, you're left wondering, was that really strength? Or just a loss of control, disguised as action? The Stoics saw this moment clearly. They understood that true power doesn't lie in how fast you can react, but in how long you can wait before you respond. Marcus Aurelius, writing in the midst of empire, war, and betrayal, said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That insight wasn't born in peace, it was forged in pressure. Because the real battlefield is not out there, it's within. And what determines victory is what you do in that fragile space between the trigger and the choice. Imagine a warrior in a crowded marketplace. Someone shoves him, calls him a name. The crowd watches, expecting retaliation, but the warrior doesn't flinch. He breathes. He studies. He lets the storm rise and pass. Then he moves, not out of rage, but intention. That's not passivity. That's power, the right way, because to respond is to lead. To react is to follow. Your anger, your fear, your ego. Every time you pause before speaking, you reclaim a piece of yourself. Every moment you choose not to post that reply, not to snap back, not to explain yourself to someone who isn't even listening, you're practicing strength. Because reaction is loud, but response is clear. Reaction is quick, but response is clean. Reaction costs you your peace. Response restores it. So the next time something strikes, don't move so fast. Breathe. Watch. Let the wave rise, then let it pass. And in that pause, ask, who do I want to be right now? That single question changes everything, because the power isn't in the moment. It's in how you meet the moment. And that is where we begin. 2. Calm the body, clarify the mind. Have you ever tried to think clearly while your heart was pounding and your breath felt stuck in your chest? It's like trying to see through muddy water. You can stare all you want, but the image never sharpens. In those moments, no quote, no insight, no philosophy really lands. Because your body isn't listening, it's surviving. Most people believe clarity begins in the mind, but clarity, in truth, begins in the body. You can't reach the right way forward if your nervous system is trapped in fight or flight. When your body is flooded with adrenaline, it's not asking deep questions. It's asking, am I safe? And the answers it gives are fast, frantic, and reactive. Escape, attack, control. That's not clarity, that's survival pretending to be strength. The Stoics didn't know the word nervous system, but they knew the principle. As Epictetus said, no man is free who is not master of himself. And self-mastery doesn't begin with thought. It begins with regulation, with the warrior's discipline to slow down, even when the world speeds up. You don't gain command over your life by pushing harder. You gain it by breathing deeper. I once heard the story of a man named Elias, a young teacher in a rough part of the city. One afternoon, a student threw a chair across the room in a rage. The classroom froze. Elias stood still. He didn't raise his voice, didn't react. He breathed. He stepped forward slowly, not to confront, but to hold the moment with calm. That act alone de-escalated everything. Later, when asked how he stayed so composed, he said, "I've trained my body not to believe every emergency it feels." That's what warriors do. They don't just master their tools, they master their response. And that's the discipline most people overlook. They want wisdom, but they skip over the step where wisdom can actually enter, the body at peace. You don't need to be enlightened to send a text, but if you're still shaking, you'd better not send it. It won't be you speaking, it'll be your storm. So the next time you feel triggered, don't force your mind to be calm. Start with your body. Breathe in through your nose. Drop your shoulders. Ground your feet. Remind your system, there's no tiger here. We're not in danger. We're simply being tested. And tests, like storms, pass. When you train yourself to stay calm in chaos, you stretch that sacred space between what happens and how you respond. You give wisdom room to speak, and you stop being someone the world can easily rattle, because true power, the right kind of power, isn't in controlling everything around you. It's in calming the thing within you. A calm body makes space for a clear mind. And a clear mind doesn't just survive the storm, it chooses how to walk through it. And now that we've quieted the chaos inside, let's talk about what happens when the outside world tries to pull us back into reaction. 3. Let time reveal truth. Have you ever felt that burning need to respond right away? The rush of adrenaline after someone disrespects you? The pulse in your fingertips as you hover over a keyboard? The voice inside that says, say something now or you'll regret it. But here's the paradox. The more urgent it feels to act, the more dangerous it becomes to act immediately. In the heat of a moment, clarity is rare. Your heart is racing, your mind is spinning, and instinct is in the driver's seat. And yet, this is precisely where most people believe they must speak, decide, strike. That's the illusion. Because what feels like power in haste often becomes regret in hindsight. The Stoics understood this long before neuroscience could explain it. Seneca wrote, "Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it." They trained themselves to wait, not because waiting is passive, but because waiting is powerful. I knew a man once, a retired Marine, who ran a small mechanic shop in a town that barely noticed him. One day, a customer stormed in, furious about a bill, shouting loud enough to rattle the glass. The man didn't flinch. He didn't defend. He just listened, quietly, calmly. Later, I asked him why he didn't say anything back. He smiled and said, "You don't fight fire with fire. You wait." And most fires burn themselves out. That's a warrior who understands time, not just as something to endure, but as a tool to wield. Time isn't your enemy. It's your ally. It lets you see what emotion tries to hide. That rude message that felt like an attack? Give it an hour, and you might read it differently. What looked like betrayal? With time, you may see it wasn't personal. It was someone else's fear, not your failure. Time has a way of stripping away illusion and leaving only what's real. In a culture that rewards instant replies and fast judgments, letting time do its work is a radical act. But if you don't slow down, you'll miss the deeper truth, not just about others, but about yourself. You'll act on stories that were never true, emotions that were never yours, fears that were never real. But if you wait, if you breathe and observe, truth starts to surface. And when it does, your choices no longer come from chaos. They come from wisdom. Letting time guide you isn't weakness. It's discipline. It's trusting that the right way will appear, not through force, but through perspective. That silence doesn't mean surrender, it means readiness. Because some things don't need a response, and the ones that do deserve a response, shaped not by urgency, but by understanding. So when the moment feels intense and the urge to act is loud, pause. Ask yourself, will this matter tomorrow? Will this matter next week? If the answer shifts with time, let time lead. Because the one who lets time speak first often speaks last and speaks best. And now, with time as our ally, let's turn inward and explore how the stories we believe can shape what we see and how we suffer. 4. Step back for clarity. Have you ever felt the pressure to say something immediately, to speak, to defend, to act, just to prove you weren't caught off guard? It's that rising tension inside your chest, that subtle panic that whispers, if you don't move now, you'll lose control. But what if that very urge is the thing stealing your control in the first place? There's a narrow space, barely noticeable, that exists between emotion and motion. And in that space lies the chance to change everything. Most people miss it. They rush in, convinced that speed equals strength. But the Stoic doesn't confuse urgency with wisdom. He knows that real power often begins not by stepping forward, but by stepping back. Because distance doesn't mean detachment. It means clarity. It's not a retreat. It's a return to yourself. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself often, know where you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul. He knew that before you step into the world's fire, you must first step into your own stillness. And it's in that stillness, not the noise, where the right way reveals itself. When something provokes you, a sharp insult, a public challenge, a personal failure, the instinct is to assert, defend, react. But instinct isn't always truth. Sometimes it's a trap. Because what looks like control on the outside might just be your emotions pulling the strings inside. There was a young woman I once knew, a new manager at a company known for high tension and sharper egos. During her first team meeting, one senior employee challenged her authority in front of everyone. The room stiffened. You could almost hear the breath being held. But she didn't react. She didn't interrupt. She paused. She listened. Then calmly, without force, she responded with clarity and direction. That moment changed everything, not just how others saw her, but how she saw herself. She had stepped back first, and when she stepped in with power. That's what stepping back does. It allows you to assess not just the situation, but your own state. Are you anchored, or are you being tugged by pride, fear, or insecurity? Because if you don't know what's driving you, you might end up somewhere you don't want to be. Pausing doesn't mean passivity, it's deliberate. It's the posture of a warrior, one who's strong enough to wait, observant enough to choose, disciplined enough to respond only when it's time. Think back on your life. How many wounds came not from what was done to you, but from how quickly you moved to fix, fight, or flee? words spoken too soon, decisions made without full sight, reactions that felt strong but left you weaker. All of them could have been softened, maybe even avoided, by a single breath and a single question. Who do I want to be in this moment? Because that's what stepping back allows. It gives you perspective. It lets you see not just what's happening, but who you are becoming through it. You stop reacting to the waves. You become the shoreline, steady, grounded, watching. The kind of strength that doesn't need to announce itself. So before you step into the fire, into the fight, or even into the conversation, pause, step back, breathe. Choose who you are before choosing what to do, because when you master the pause, you don't just change the outcome, you change yourself. And once you've reclaimed that space, the next question becomes, who are you when no one else sees the battle you're fighting? Let's go there. 5. Master emotion, don't obey it. Have you ever looked back on something you said in anger and wondered, who was I in that moment? The words came fast. The heat in your chest took over. You said what felt right, but later it felt all wrong. That's the trick reactivity plays. It feels like control until you realize you've lost it. Reactivity disguises itself as strength, as decisiveness, even as self-respect. But when you look deeper, you see it's not clarity leading you, it's emotion. Anger, pride, fear, insecurity, none of these ask permission. They grab the wheel, and in that split second where you could have paused, they drive you somewhere you didn't intend to go. Epictetus warned us, it's not events that disturb people, it's their judgments about them. But when you're reactive, there's no room for judgment. There's just instinct, just movement, just noise. A man I once knew, quiet, soft-spoken, was in the military for years. I asked him once if he'd ever yelled in combat. He said, only once, and it got people hurt. Since then, I learned that a warrior stays still inside, even when the ground shakes. That stayed with me, because the strongest people don't react, they respond. Not because they're passive, but because they've outgrown the need to prove themselves through noise. They've learned the right way to lead starts with restraint. Think of the last time you let someone's words ruin your day. A look, a comment, a delay. Not because they had power over you, but because you gave it to them. Every time you react without reflection, you hand your peace to someone who didn't earn it. You give them access to your inner world. That's like handing your house keys to a stranger in the street. Then we wonder why we feel unstable, why we say, I didn't mean that, why we wish we could go back. The Stoic path doesn't ask you to pretend you don't feel. It asks you to feel fully without becoming a slave to the feeling. You let the emotion rise. You let it pass. But you don't let it decide. That's the discipline. To feel the tension, the anger, the impulse, and to do something radical. Pause, breathe, return. Remind yourself, this is a test. I don't need to win it with rage. I win by not being moved. Over time, this becomes who you are. You don't chase every insult. You don't explain yourself to every critic. You don't rise to every provocation. Not because you're cold, but because you've chosen freedom over reactivity, mastery over impulse, and integrity over approval. This is Stoicism, not as a theory, but as a lived strength in real time. So remember this, just because you feel something doesn't mean you must act. Just because someone provokes you doesn't mean they deserve your energy. Hold your response like it's sacred, because it is. If you're still here, you're not just watching, you're practicing. Drop a comment, stillness. And if this resonated, subscribe to keep sharpening your inner discipline. because the next insight we explore will show you how silence, used wisely, can command more respect than words ever could. 6. Respond with wisdom, not ego. Have you ever been in a room full of noise, voices clashing, opinions flying, and noticed the one person who wasn't rushing to speak? The one who simply listened, waited, observed. There's something about that stillness, something powerful, something rare. That's what wisdom feels like. It doesn't interrupt. It doesn't rush. It walks quietly, anchored in something deeper than impulse. In a world that confuses loudness with leadership, responding with thoughtfulness becomes almost revolutionary. The Stoics knew this. They didn't equate wisdom with knowledge. To them, wisdom was discernment, the practiced ability to pause, to reflect, and then to act only if it serves a greater good. Every moment life throws at you is a test. Every difficult encounter, a mirror. The way you respond isn't just a reflection of that moment, it's a reflection of the kind of person you've chosen to become. You can have a brilliant mind and still be owned by your emotions. You can have education and status and still let a careless word shatter your peace. But if you can pause long enough, just long enough to choose your response, you've already done what most can't. You've taken the sword of your mind out of shaking hands. You've made clarity your weapon instead of chaos. A friend once told me about her grandfather, a quiet farmer who never raised his voice. One evening, a neighbor stormed onto his property, yelling about a boundary dispute. The man didn't shout back. He didn't flinch. He simply stood there, listening. Then calmly, he walked the man to the edge of the property, pointed to the old marker stone, and said, "It's always been here." The neighbor left in silence. No rage, no fight, just truth, delivered without disturbance. That's the kind of strength that can't be faked, the kind of wisdom that whispers louder than shouting ever could. To respond wisely is to carry peace like a shield. It means you've done the hard inner work. You've questioned your stories. You've stepped outside your ego. You've trained your body not to tremble at every emotional gust of wind. People feel that. They may not say it, but they sense the rootedness in you, because roots don't move for passing weather. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Let that settle." It means that when someone brings pride, you bring humility. When they bring chaos, you bring stillness. When they try to trigger you, you simply don't respond, not because you're avoiding conflict, but because you've chosen a higher path. A warrior doesn't accept every invitation to fight. He waits, he watches, and when he moves the right way. Yes, there will be moments when your body screams to lash out, when your pride begs to strike. But you have to ask, win what? At what cost? What do I gain by responding with noise? What do I lose by holding peace? Let every email, every rude glance, every careless word be your practice ground. Don't just survive those moments, use them. Let them teach you. Because when you respond with clarity instead of chaos, you're not just answering life, you're mastering it. And now that we've seen the strength in stillness, let's explore how silence, used wisely, becomes one of the most commanding forces in the Stoic arsenal. 7. Breathe before you break. Have you ever felt that split second before something slips out of your mouth, something sharp, something you'll wish you could take back? That moment when your chest tightens, your heart pounds, and your whole body screams for release. It happens fast, like a match striking dry wood. But between the spark and the fire, there's a silence. And in that silence, there's breath. Always there, always waiting. Breath is more than air. It's your anchor. It's the bridge between emotion and choice, between reactivity and reflection. The Stoics may not have spoken in terms of biology, but they understood the deeper principle that to govern the mind, one must first return to the body. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And what fuels that imagination? A mind ungrounded, a body lost in turbulence. But breath, simple, steady breath, has the power to call both back home. You may have seen it yourself. A soldier before stepping into chaos, a nurse holding pressure in an emergency room, a parent trying not to snap when the house is falling apart. The warrior knows the first move is not forward, it's inward, one breath. That's where the battle begins. That's where the outcome is shaped. Because while emotion can hijack breath, breath can also tame emotion. There's a story about a teacher who was known for never raising his voice, no matter how wild the classroom became. One day, a student slammed a book to the floor, challenging him. The room froze. The teacher said nothing. He closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, exhaled slowly, then looked the student in the eye, not with fury, but with unshaken presence, and simply asked, "Are you finished?" The energy in the room shifted. He didn't dominate the moment, he stabilized it, and he did it with one breath. We often think we need time, wisdom, strength to respond well, but in truth, all we need is presence, and presence lives inside your breath. You don't need a full meditation routine to access this. You just need to notice that half second before you send the angry reply, that heartbeat before you defend yourself, that urge to interrupt, to correct, to lash out. That's the opening. Inhale, exhale. Let the wave pass through you, not take you with it. The breath doesn't stop the storm, it gives you a place to stand in the middle of it. It returns you to the only moment where power exists, now. And from that grounded place, you don't react blindly. You respond the right way. You don't become the storm, you endure it. Calm, centered, clear. So the next time you feel the fire rise, don't speak. Breathe, don't fight. Anchor. Because every battle begins inside, and sometimes the breath is the only sword you need. And when you've found that still point within, we can begin to explore the power of saying less, and why silence often speaks the loudest. 8. Observe without being swept away. Have you ever watched your own thoughts like a storm rolling in, dark, fast, impossible to stop, and felt as though you had no choice but to go with them? That one comment that stung, that glance that felt like judgment, that silence that felt louder than words. In those moments, it's easy to get swept away. But imagine instead standing at the edge of your inner world, like standing at the shore of the ocean, not the wave, but the witness to it. Your emotions rise and fall like tides. Your thoughts drift like passing clouds. And you are the shore, you are the sky, not the storm, not the wave. The moment you see this clearly, you begin to understand what real freedom is. The Stoics knew that true strength doesn't come from avoiding feelings, but from observing them without becoming them. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself often, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." And that power begins the moment you stop reacting and start witnessing. Observation is a practice, not a gift. It's the art of stepping back just enough to ask, what's really happening here? Not what the voice in your head is shouting, but what's truly unfolding beneath the surface. Are you angry, or are you hurt? Are you offended, or is an old wound being pressed again? This kind of inner questioning doesn't distance you from life, it deepens your understanding of it. There was a man I once knew, an old craftsman who worked with wood. He told me that before carving, he would sit with the raw block for hours, just staring, feeling, waiting. "You don't shape the wood," he said. "You understand it." Then the shape reveals itself. His workshop was filled with silence, but it was the kind of silence that carried weight. That's what the observational mindset is. It's the silence before action, the clarity before choice. It's where the warrior learns to see clearly, so his strikes are clean and his steps are the right way forward. The world urges you to jump into every wave, debate, defend, explain, retaliate. But that urgency is often noise, and if you react to all of it, you lose touch with the quiet truth inside you. The Stoic doesn't avoid emotion. He simply refuses to drown in it. He anchors himself in observation because clarity lives not in chaos, but in stillness. So when judgment whispers, observe. When the urge to prove rises, observe. When the emotion begins to grip, just observe. Let it move, let it pass. You don't need to fix it. You don't need to fight it. You just need to see it. Because the observer is not passive. The observer is powerful. He is the one who chooses when and how to act. And more importantly, he is the one who knows when not to. And once you've rooted yourself in awareness, there's a deeper question waiting. What do you really owe the world, and what must you learn to release? Let's step into that next. 9. Choose action, not overreaction. Have you ever felt the rush to defend yourself before you even fully understood what was said? That instant heat in your chest, the impulse to strike back with words or actions that feel strong in the moment but leave you hollow afterward? It happens to all of us. But the truth is, not every surge of energy deserves to become movement. Not every feeling is worthy of becoming action. The Stoics drew a sharp line between acting and overreacting. Action is deliberate. It's anchored in reason, aligned with purpose. Overreaction is born from turbulence, fear, pride, wounded ego. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." That's not suppression. That's alignment. The difference is discipline. Imagine someone insults you, loudly, publicly. Your first instinct might be to cut them down, to reclaim your pride with sharper words. But the warrior in you, the one walking the right way, knows that this is a test, not a command. To overreact would be to let them decide your behavior. To act wisely would be to stay rooted in your values. There was a story I once heard of a man whose co-worker constantly undermined him in meetings. For weeks, he felt the sting, wanted to retaliate, to embarrass him back. But he chose silence. He listened. He observed. Then, one day, when asked to present on a project, he delivered his points calmly, clearly, and with quiet authority. The contrast was obvious. His restraint made him powerful. His patience spoke louder than retaliation ever could. Overreaction clouds judgment. It scatters your focus. It leaves behind regret, broken relationships, missed opportunities, wasted strength. When you act without awareness, you're not responding. You're escaping. And escape always costs more than it offers. The Stoic way invites you to pause, to breathe, to notice. What's driving you right now? Is this pride or is this principle? Is it truth you want to express or pain? To act with purpose, you must first know what triggers you. You must train yourself to pause when your body screams to move. And in that pause, you find power. Because when you wait, even for a breath, you regain choice. With practice, that pause becomes natural. That space becomes your strength. You become the one who decides, not the world, not your emotions. The Stoic doesn't act on every impulse. He doesn't chase every insult or rise to every bait. Not because he's indifferent, but because he's selective. He conserves energy. He protects his peace. He fights only when the cause is clear, and when he does, he moves cleanly, calmly, like a sword, drawn only when necessary. So ask yourself, in the heat of the next moment, what do I gain by reacting? What might I lose by holding my center? Real power is not loud, it's not fast, it's quiet, rooted and clear. The Stoic acts not to be seen, but to stay aligned, not to prove a point, but to walk the path of mastery. And once you've learned to move with intention, not impulse, there remains one final truth. Your response shapes more than your moment. It shapes your identity. Let's step into that now. 10. Find freedom in the pause. Have you ever caught yourself mid-reaction, just before the words escaped, just before your face changed, just before your voice rose, and wondered, what if I didn't go through with this? That split second, that invisible breath between what happens and what you do next, is where your entire power lives. It's so small, most people miss it. They let life shove them forward through traffic jams, rude comments, sudden disappointments, and they react as if they've been programmed to. But the Stoics knew better. They taught that between stimulus and response lies something sacred, the space where your freedom begins. Marcus Aurelius wrote that external events are neither good nor bad. It's our judgment of them that defines our lives. And in that moment, that space, you decide how your story unfolds. Think of a warrior walking into chaos. He doesn't charge blindly. He steps into stillness first. He listens. He watches. And then, when the moment comes, he moves, not out of panic, but out of purpose. That's the right way to live. Not avoiding the storms, but entering them as the calm within. There was a man who once told me his life changed the day he learned to pause. A former executive known for his temper who lost too many friendships to words he couldn't take back. One day, after nearly firing a team member in a rage, he sat alone in his car and did something different. He just breathed. No decisions, no emails, just breath. The next day, he asked a question instead of giving an order. The project got better, so did the relationship. That moment, that breath, saved more than just a job. It saved a version of himself. To cultivate that space is to train your mind to slow down in a world that rushes you. It's not easy. At first, the emotion will scream louder than your awareness. But over time, the pause becomes your practice. The gap becomes your ground. And within it, you discover something unshakable. Peace that no insult can touch, clarity that no chaos can cloud. You stop reacting, you begin responding, you stop surviving the world, you start shaping it, quietly, powerfully, from within. That is the Stoic path. And that final breath between what happens and how you meet it, that is your freedom. So the next time life presses on you, take a breath and remember that between what happens and how you respond lies your true power. In that quiet space, you are no longer a product of chaos, but a creator of calm. Every pause is a choice. Every breath is a return to yourself. This is how you begin to live on your terms, with presence, with clarity, with strength. If something in this message resonated, let it stay with you. Subscribe if you're ready to keep building that inner discipline. And in the comments, write, hold still. Because your ability to hold still when the world pushes is not weakness, it's mastery. And in our next reflection, we'll go deeper into how silence, used wisely, can speak louder than any reaction. Stay steady. You're not just surviving, you're rising.